Hallo und herzlich willkommen. Datenklau, Fake News, politische Werbung. Wir alle kennen mittlerweile die Schattenseiten von Google, Facebook und Co. Heute will ich wissen, was wir dagegen tun können, ja tun müssen. Zu Gast ist der Publizist Evgeny Morozov, einer der ersten und einflussreichsten Kritiker des Internets. Verwenden Sie eigentlich auch Google Maps?
Yeah, I use it all the time. I used it this morning, in fact.
Haben Sie nicht dieses Dilemma als Kritiker dieser Internetkonzerne, die unsere Daten sammeln und so weiter, die Dinge auch zu verwenden? So Sachen wie Gmail, Google Mail oder auch WhatsApp und Facebook. Benutzen Sie all diese Dinge und wie gehen Sie mit diesem Dilemma um?
Well, I think we have to be critical of these platforms and of their services, but we have to be critical in an intelligent way. And we have to assign the blame where it belongs. It's not my fault as a user and as a citizen that there are no other alternatives to use online maps, but the ones offered by Silicon Valley.
Aber man könnte auch sagen, letztlich haben wir die Macht. Wir können entscheiden, dass wir von WhatsApp weggehen und Signal verwenden zum Beispiel, eine andere Kommunikations-App. Wir haben ja letztlich die Userinnen und User die Macht.
We don't have that power because here we're talking about infrastructures. You know, we have policies and we have big programs to build infrastructures. You know, when there is no bus or tram or train in your city, you're not expected to build them on your own, right? You're not expected to lay out the road and start driving on it if there is no road. It's a problem of collective action, and as a problem of collective action, it has to be tackled by the public. I should not be the one who has to suffer moral dilemmas when the problems are entirely political and not individual in nature. And that, I think, is the mistaken view that we've taken in Silicon Valley. We perceive collective problems, collective failings of politics as our moral failings, individual failings. And that's not at all the case.
Und Sie würden sagen, Google, Facebook und so weiter, das ist Teil einer öffentlichen Infrastruktur, so wie Straßen, wie eine Schule zum Beispiel. Und deswegen sollten wir sie auch nutzen oder deswegen sollte die Politik sich des Problems annehmen und das nicht unser
Sure. Well, this is so politically, but this is so historically. The data that Google used to build Google Maps, it was all paid for by the government. They went and bought a company that was a huge contractor for the Pentagon, and that company eventually became Google Maps. It was data that was gathered with public money. So historically, it is public data of sorts. But politically, I think it's an important question to be had. Have we moved into the current arrangement prematurely? Have we surrendered too much power to the private players, thinking that these questions are questions of the market and not questions that ought to be discussed and debated in the policy, in the political sphere? And I think that we have. And we need to make sure that we don't surrender even more, because now we're talking about cloud computing, quantum computing, all these big debates, knowing that maybe in the first 2 or 3 decades, we have already surrendered too much ground, and we need to take it slower and perhaps reverse some of that process and claim some of it back.
Ich möchte noch mal zu dieser individuellen Perspektive zurück von den Nutzerinnen und Nutzern. Ich meine, es ist ja sehr bequem, all diese Dienstleistungen und Apps und Webseiten zu verwenden, weil sie sind ja gratis. Aber wie wir alle wissen, ist es nicht ganz gratis. Also wir bezahlen nicht mit Cash, mit Geld, sondern mit unseren Daten. Und dafür sehen wir dann personalisierte Werbung. Also die Werbung ist auf uns zugeschnitten. Das ist das, ganz einfach gesagt, das Geschäftsmodell. Was würden Sie denn sagen, ist das Hauptproblem an diesem Geschäftsmodell?
Well, the first thing we have to understand is that their business models are extremely complex. So if you look at Google, yes, they might be gathering data on users who are using their simple services like search. But then that data might be used to inform their artificial intelligence services, which are then sold to governments, that are then sold to companies, that are then used in things that have nothing to do with search. It's an extremely complex business model where it's not just individuals who are searching for, shoes or restaurants online who are the primary targets. Right now, a lot of the money that these companies make, it comes from services. They sell cloud computing services to our healthcare systems, to our education systems, to our transportation systems. A lot of the services were made, once again, without data. then the question should be, is it really okay for us to be training the services and then to be paying for the use of these services because it's our governments who are then paying for artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and everything else? I mean, there are a lot of questions which these companies would rather not even pose because they know that the moment we start posing them, their business models will come under scrutiny. They might need to be taxed, they might need to share their data, they might need to accept public action, which right now they have completely opposed.
Okay, interessant. Also Sie sagen, die Zeit, wo die nur Daten gesammelt haben, ist eigentlich vorbei. Jetzt verkaufen die smarte Dinge, wo künstliche Intelligenz drinsteckt, wo auch unsere Daten und all die Algorithmen drinstecken. Das ist jetzt irgendwie eine neue Phase, die kommt. Die Dinge werden verkauft, weil sie diesen Vorsprung haben aufgrund unserer Daten. Und jetzt müssen wir dafür zahlen, eigentlich für unsere Daten, die wir damals geliefert haben.
I mean, this is what a lot of people don't understand. They think that artificial intelligence, it's either drops from the sky or it's developed by these genius boys wearing, hoodies and floppies in Silicon Valley garage. I mean, in reality, much of it comes from us, the users, giving the data and training the services. Every time you use Google, occasionally it will show you, please select all of the pictures with traffic lights or all of the pictures with cars. Sometimes Google asks you that, thinking that maybe you're a spammer, maybe you are spreading malware.
Dass du kein Roboter bist oder so, musst du dann irgendwie ausweisen.
Exactly, but in the process of filling in what's known as CAPTCHA, I mean, these images, they're called CAPTCHA, in the process of filling them in, you are training Google image recognition systems. So as a result, they know how to differentiate a car from an animal and an animal from a traffic light. I mean, who is supposed to be responsible for this skill? Is it something that we have given to this company? Perhaps. If we have given it to the company, why should we be charged as citizens for the application of this skill in healthcare, education, military, transportation, and so forth? Maybe Google should be paying us instead, right? But that's not the question that I would like to be tackled.
Das ist interessant. Man spürt schon, Sie schauen hinter die Fassade, diese Ideologie auch, diese Geschichten, die uns das Silicon Valley immer verkaufen, schauen die Machtverhältnisse an, die Zusammenhänge, auch die Verstrickungen mit der Politik. Das machen Sie schon seit einigen Jahren, Jahrzehnten. Sie haben vor über 10 Jahren 2 einflussreiche Bücher geschrieben. Eines davon trägt den Titel »Smarte neue Welt«. Und aufgewachsen sind Sie, das hört man auch an Ihrem Akzent noch, in Belarus, in Weißrussland, und sind dort auch zur Schule gegangen, haben dann studiert in Bulgarien mit einem Stipendium der Open Society Institutes von George Soros. Waren dann auch eine Zeit lang in Berlin für eine NGO, deswegen verstehen Sie auch sehr gut Deutsch. Sie können jetzt auch ein bisschen Deutsch reden.
Ganz.
Und mittlerweile sind Sie ein einflussreicher Publizist, der in der New York Times, im Guardian, in der FAZ und so weiter publiziert und eine große, wichtige, kritische Stimme in Sachen Internet und Digitalkonzerne. Mich interessiert biografisch, wann hat das bei Ihnen angefangen? Wo Sie gemerkt haben, das läuft in die falsche Richtung. Ich will kein Nerd sein, der da mitentwickelt, sondern ich will die Dinge kritisieren.
Well, since the very beginning, I was very interested in computers. My parents got me a computer early on when I was still maybe 12 or 13. I enjoyed very basic programming, so I was very nerdy in that sense. And
damals noch in Belarus?
Yeah, when I was still in Belarus, when I was a teen, essentially. But that interest in computers eventually led me to observe and to monitor this world of new media. Before the term social media came about, people talked about new media. In the early 2000s, there was a lot of discussion about the political power of blogs and social networks and text messaging. You might remember there were these color revolutions in Eastern Europe, in Ukraine, of course, but also in Georgia, in Kyrgyzstan, in Serbia. You had a US presidential candidate, Howard Dean, using text messaging and blogs to mobilize fundraising. Before Obama, before Bernie Sanders, in 2004, there was this hope that an insurgent candidate can come and raise money and kind of break with the tradition of the Democratic Party.
Ein Instrument der Freiheit, der Demokratie, so
and a very populist message, right, to some extent. So the idea was that the ordinary person in the street, the activist, the politician, the young person, the oppositional politician, armed with these new technologies, they would be able to break the status quo.
Das hat man ja auch beim arabischen Frühling zum Beispiel dann auch.
So that was the culmination of this myth and expectation. But even before Arab Spring happened, I already started sensing that something is wrong with this mythology, because I believed in that myth powerfully. I went and worked for this NGO called Transitions Online. We did a lot of work in Eastern Europe. We did a lot of work essentially talking to activists, oppositional politicians and journalists who were critical of the government, and trying to make sure that they become like this politician in America, Howard Dean, or like this movement in Ukraine. You know, we wanted these people to be armed with this new media skills so they can become more efficient political actors. And eventually I understood that we in this space are very naive, because the governments and Western corporations, they had other plans. They did not see these tools as tools of liberation. They saw these tools either as instruments of control or as machines for making money. And when these two logics came together, the logic of control that the governments wanted to use for surveillance, for censorship, for spreading propaganda, for cyber attacks, when it kind of came together with the logic of these companies who just wanted to get more cash, they wanted to sell their equipment, sell their services, sell their platforms, I understood that we are sending these young activists to a lot of risk, because we are telling them, use blogs, use social networks, organize against your government, while in fact they were running huge risks, because these tools were insecure, the governments knew how to use them, and these people were essentially organizing for their own arrest, and for their own, in some cases, you know, even worse, beating and torture and whatnot. And this is when I understood that we have a certain myth, a certain utopia. We think that this wave of liberation that started with the fall of the Berlin Wall and with the fall of the Soviet Union, we thought that somehow the role that radio broadcasts, fax machines, Xerox machines played in that downfall of communism, we thought that it would continue for decades to come, and that blogs and social networks, it would accelerate all of it, so that by 2020 or 22, we would all be living in a democratic utopia where history has ended, where everybody is living in democratic conditions, everybody knows about human rights violations, there is no manipulation, no government interference, no fake news, no censorship, no surveillance. And we ended up at the very opposite end of the spectrum. And I think I understood it already in 2010, 2011. It's just that back then I was the black sheep, spoiling the party, saying that, you know, saying the contrarian things to the public opinion, and unfortunately not very much listened to.
Und heute sind uns diese Schattenseiten der Digitalkonzerne sehr, sehr bewusst, mit der Überwachung, mit Datenklau, auch Wettbewerbsverzerrung und so weiter. Und Sie haben wirklich schon vor über 10 Jahren darüber geschrieben, das ist interessant. Trotzdem gab es noch so eine Radikalisierung in Ihrem Denken, und die hat mit Ihrer Frau zu tun, habe ich gelesen. Francesca Bria, Sie leben zusammen in Italien, ist eine der führenden Figuren im Bereich Innovation, Digitalisierung, berät auch die Europäische Union und diverse Städte wie Rom oder Barcelona in Sachen Digitalisierung. Auch Botschafterin der UNO, der Vereinten Nationen für digitale Städte. Wie hat sie es geschafft, Sie noch ein bisschen zu radikalisieren oder noch auf andere Schattenseiten, dunkle Flecken hinzuweisen?
Well, as I mentioned, you know, my background originally was in Eastern Europe. In Eastern Europe, we still had this legacy of the Cold War, you know, the legacy of dissidents, the legacy of struggle against governments. You know, we treasured American and Western culture, jeans, Hollywood, you know, Coca-Cola, and all of that. And my encounter was more critical Western European, let's put it that way, descent was minimal. And my wife, Francesca, she just happens to come from a somewhat different current, from a more, let's say, radical, critical strand in Italian political life as well. And encountering her almost a decade ago, I understood that maybe there are other perspectives on politics, on geopolitics, and on economics. And we've been in this dialogue for a decade, and I think she learned a lot from me, I learned a lot from her, but her work was always much closer to social movements, was much closer to activists. Initially, you know, she was very prominent in the city of Barcelona, where she was the chief technology officer, when the mayor was and still is, Ada Colau. She was a very radical mayor elected by a social movement with a transformative, radical democratic agenda. And of course, when you're put in a position like that, of being the chief technology officer of a city that needs to think about how can you involve citizens in decision-making and in using digital technologies, not just hiding from them, not just rejecting them, but in using them to steer the political project towards a more egalitarian, more just direction. You know, it's a practical challenge. And me being more of an intellectual theorist, you know, I kind of neglected that until that moment. And since then, I've been also thinking much more pragmatically, what are the policies we can put in place? What can cities do? What can nation states do? What should be our direction other than just promoting startups, building incubators, giving money to venture capitalists? This is what our governments know how to do, creating, you know, crypto valleys and whatnot. What else can be done, right? If we care not just about consumers and venture capitalists, what if we care about citizens? Because citizens have many identities. You know, as citizens, we are parents, we are neighbors, we are activists, we care about the environment, and our interests as citizens have to be represented in this debate as well. It's not just about buying cheaper, flying cheaper, and being entertained.
Ja, das ist halt die Gefahr, dass wir keine Bürgerinnen und Bürger mehr sind, sondern nur noch Konsumenten, KonsumentInnen. Wir schauen uns diese Auswege, Ihre Vorschläge alle an. Ich möchte erst noch auf die Schattenseiten, auf die Probleme kommen. Und da gibt es ja wie zwei Felder, kann man sagen. Das eine ist sozusagen das Persönliche, also dass mich die digitalen Medien, dass die süchtig machen, wie es gezeigt, dass sie uns radikalisieren. Wir haben die Sache mit politischer Werbung, mit Fake News und so weiter. Ich möchte ein Beispiel herausgreifen, dass sie auch persönlich sehr gefährlich werden können, etwa was die Körperbilder angeht. Also es gibt eine Geschichte, die wir gleich anschauen, einen Ausschnitt aus dem Film Made to Measure. Da erzählt die Protagonistin, wie sie magersüchtig wurde und dann diese Magersucht verstärkt wurde, indem sie immer stärker mit problematischen Bildern und Angeboten gefüttert wurde. Wir hören hier mal kurz zu.
Ich war da mitten in einer Essstörung. Ich war da, und auch das Körperliche war so ein Streichhölzchen. Menschen mit einer Essstörung suchen dann nach Dingen, also alles, was mit Diäten, Kalorien und so weiter und so fort zu tun hat. Und diese Worte, diese Schlagworte sind natürlich wie Köder für solche Werbungen, für Diäten, für Nahrungsergänzungsmittel, für weiß ich nicht. Und auch ich, die jetzt da genesen ist, bekomme immer noch diese Werbungen geschalten. Ich für mich, ich kann mit dem jetzt umgehen, weil es mir auch nicht mehr triggert. Aber wenn man sich das überlegt, wenn du da im Regenerationsprozess bist und immer wieder kriegst du diese Werbungen geschalten, eigentlich würde es verboten gehören. Alles, was damit zu tun hat, das ist eigentlich ein Wahnsinn.
Ja, ein Wahnsinn, den man verbieten müsste eigentlich. Kann man denn das, diese Sachen verbieten?
I think we can, but we have again to understand that a lot of this harm, a lot of these harmful effects, they come from very peculiar business models of the platforms operating this, and they want to minimize their costs. This is why we've seen Facebook eventually being used for genocidal purposes in places like Myanmar, because essentially for a long time these companies, they wanted to make as much money as they could because their share price was tied to it, because they just, why would they care? They trust the algorithms. They believe that algorithms are objective, they make no mistakes, so they delegate everything to algorithms. And of course, when you think about it, it's a way of avoiding responsibility, but it's also a way of minimizing costs. So on the one hand, they don't want to interfere, they don't want to hire a lot of people who would go there and manually look at it and decide this picture is harmful, this picture is not harmful. But at the same time, they want more activity, because the more you interact with their platform, the more they know about you, the more valuable you become to them as a target of advertising. And once you put these two dynamics together, this kind of hyper-amplification of behaviors and clicks and anxieties, because the more anxious you are, the more clicks you will produce. That's the logic. And they amplify it because this way you generate value, combined with this other dynamic of minimizing costs and removing themselves from any moderating influence. It produces horrible results. And a lot of us are prisoners of it, and we have to find either individual solutions, with a lot of people paying for programs like digital detox. You know, they go to camps where they pay thousands of euros and francs and dollars to disconnect.
Von dieser Sucht wegzukommen, von diesem Gefängnis, wie Sie sagen.
Exactly. To enforce this disconnection. Or they have to suffer the social opprobrium by not being present on these networks. You know, try being an intellectual today who's young, who's just starting out, without having presence on Twitter, without having presence on Instagram. Try to sell books not being present there. So there is a social expectation that you have to be there. But the environment is not particularly hospitable to mental health, let's put it that way. And unfortunately, again, we have to start thinking about this matters, I think, with the idea that things can be different. They can be built otherwise. And that's how we approached all the other social challenges throughout history. We've built institutions, we've built libraries, we've built universities, we've built the post office, we built all sorts of institutions to make our communications, learning processes, and so forth easier, but more meaningful. We put them outside of the market, and they've produced terrific results. And when it comes to the digital, this part of our brain responsible for institutional imagination, you know, imagining alternative institutions, imagining how they can be funded through taxes, through fees, through something else. You know, we've invented stamps to pay for postage, to pay for mailing things. It was 200 years ago, more. It wasn't disruptive. Maybe it's not something that Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk would pay billions of dollars for, but it was a way of funding communication nationally. And I think we need to rediscover the spirit of imagining institutions that can facilitate our being and living together on terms that are not just terms of the market and not just terms of this permanent consumption that this industry wants to promote, because that's how we become more valuable as targets of advertising.
Das heißt, es braucht ein ganz anderes Geschäftsmodell oder eigentlich ein Wegkommen von diesen privaten Großkonzernen und eine Verstaatlichung oder eine Kollektivierung oder eine Demokratisierung. Das ist eine Gefahr, diese persönlichen Gefahren, dieses Gefängnis, das da entsteht, diese Sucht, diese Radikalisierung. Das andere ist ein gesellschaftliches, auf das Sie natürlich auch hinweisen, aber auf das auch die US-Ökonomin Shoshana Zuboff hingewiesen hat mit ihren Büchern und die diesen Begriff des Überwachungskapitalismus geprägt hat, der sie eingeschlagen hat. Was das genau ist, das lassen wir Sie gleich selbst erklären.
What is surveillance capitalism? It rests on the discovery that private human experience was to be the last virgin wood available for extraction, production, commodification, and sales. People, that means us, we did become chattel for commerce. That's exactly what happened. And the results are shaking democracy to its core. They're transforming our daily lives. They're challenging the social contracts that we've inherited from the Enlightenment, and indeed threatening the very viability of human freedom, just as was predicted. Under siege though it may be, the only possible remedy for all of this is democracy.
Ja, die Demokratie ist in Gefahr, aber sie ist auch der einzige Ausweg daraus. Wie groß ist denn diese Gefahr für unsere Demokratien?
Well, it's big, but both in the levels of individuals, where we are no longer masters ourselves, because we are too anxious, we worry too much. We might be seeing materials online that have been manipulated by somebody. So in that sense, as political subjects, we have been compromised somewhat. But there is also, of course, institutional danger. And this is where, again, I think we've become prisoners of the solutions that these companies offer, and we then redefine the rest of the society around them, as opposed to vice versa. So, now they've invented AI, so we need to think about how we can redesign our healthcare system, about sensors that we're going to wear. And we'll have to monitor ourselves. Why? Because it's the easiest way for Google or Facebook or Amazon or Microsoft to make money. Right? It's not about building this robust healthcare institutions where we're pooling all the resources, collectivizing the risks, and making it easier for people to lead lives that are meaningful and where anxiety is minimized. No, their business models favor a healthcare system where all of us are perpetually monitoring how much we sleep with sensors built into our watches, sensors built into our beds. We're then sharing that data with their servers, and all the anxieties, all the risks, all of the concerns are outsourced to us, the users, which, is just a way of gathering data. I mean, that's one way of normalizing their business model and of presenting it as a solution to an important problem like healthcare. But I think we should say, no, we don't want to start with what already exists. We don't want to start with the solutions that they want to sell us. We have to start by imagining how would we redefine healthcare in a way that is digital, but that's also just, that doesn't assume that all the responsibility of, if you look at America, for example, a place where I've lived for almost a decade, America has a lot of problems. You look at the problems it has in health, there are a lot of people who are overweight. Are they overweight because they are not monitoring themselves enough with their smartphone? Or are they overweight because the big food industry with McDonald's and others are completely dominating public sphere, policy sphere? They have too many lobbyists, and it's them who need to be curtailed for the Americans to be healthy. So there is always this danger that we will settle on this rather unambitious, low-hanging fruit solutions that these companies are giving us with apps, with sensors, with this perpetual monitoring of our individual behavior, and we forego this more ambitious structural interventions, which doesn't mean we are technophobic. We should be using technology, but we have also to be careful not to go with wrong casual explanations of problems, because they exist for various reasons, not just because of our individual failings.
Das ist interessant. Also die haben eine sehr gute Werbung gemacht, könnte man auch sagen. So etwas wie Gehirnwäsche. Wir denken, das ist die Lösung. Die geben uns die Lösung für die Probleme und haben gar nicht wirklich mal über unsere Probleme und andere Arten von Lösungen nachgedacht. Das ist auch das, was sie Solutionismus nennen. Also dass man gesellschaftliche, auch existenzielle Probleme mit Hilfe von Technologie, mit einer App zum Beispiel lösen kann, dass ich besser schlafe oder dass ich den Klimawandel verändere oder dass ich sogar unsterblich werde oder Langlebigkeit. Das sind ja urmenschliche Probleme und die Leute im Silicon Valley, etwas vereinfacht gesagt, sagen sie, präsentieren irgendein Gadget oder eine Technologie und sagen, da habt ihr die Lösung. Und auf dieses Denken sind wir reingefallen.
But if we're honest with ourselves, we also have to acknowledge that we're not really solving problems with these apps or these sensors. We're mitigating the effects of the problems. So we can live with the effects that the problems produce without doing anything about the underlying causes. And it's, a little bit like the debate about climate change, So we can mitigate, we can survive the fact that the world is getting warmer. But we don't want necessarily to alter the way that our economic activity is organized. And of course, they'll give us all sorts of devices, all sorts of solutions in which we can make the world more livable and more survivable. But at the end, the risk is that we're always moving closer to the brave new world that Aldous Huxley described, where, yes, we think we're entertained, but that's only the result of some hallucination produced in our minds through pills and through medical interventions. And my fear is that, a lot of this digital reality that we are living in, when we are really thinking we are solving hunger in Africa, we are resolving the energy crisis, we are trying to extend people's lives, it's really not solving anything. It's just making sure that somebody can sell their solution, make some money, Jeff Bezos can go to space, Elon Musk can, buy another newspaper or service. So all this activity happens. It's just that this activity, it's relatively trivial. It's not trying to be ambitious, it's not bold, it's not radical.
Aber schauen wir doch mal diverse Lösungsansätze an. Einerseits könnte man sagen, diese großen Konzerne, Google, Amazon, Apple, Facebook und so weiter, die haben eine ungeheure Marktmacht. Da ist kein Wettbewerb mehr da, das sind Monopole oder ein Oligopol. Jetzt könnte man sagen, warum zerschlägt man diese großen Konzerne nicht, wie damals die Ölkonzerne, die Stahl- und Tabakkonzerne in den USA. Das geschah ja, die wurden dann aufgesplittet in kleinere, damit wieder Wettbewerb herrschte. Warum schafft das die USA nicht? Oder warum schaffen wir das alle nicht zusammen?
So there are several reasons why that's not happening. Some of them are geopolitical. Because if you destroy it in the United States, then you'll end up with China that has its own internet and digital champions that it will never split, essentially becoming the world leader. So, and Silicon Valley knows this. So whenever Mark Zuckerberg goes to testify to Congress, he makes that point. You break us, you end up empowering Alibaba and Tencent and all of our competitors, and you shouldn't do that for geopolitical reasons. So that's not going to happen, I think, ever.
Dann werden wir verlieren gegen China, gegen die großen Konzerne da.
Exactly. But beyond that, I think even if we were prepared to ignore this geopolitical challenge, I mean, I think that people who are really looking for meaningful solutions, they have to understand that having 20 Facebooks or 30 Facebooks, it's not going to ultimately produce much of a result. If what we want is an ambitious, bold program for how to make communication between people, citizens, governments, institutions more meaningful, to allow people, because I truly think that if all your friends are in one place, you probably want to be talking to them. You don't want to be talking to 20 different groups and 50 different groups. So that's not the solution. But ultimately, I think, and this, what bothers me also about Shoshana Zuboff's argument, which we've seen about surveillance capitalism, she assumes that once these companies change their business model, once they no longer suck the data out of us and they just charge us money, things will be okay. Just like Apple does. Apple doesn't want our data. Apple will send you an iPhone and will charge you 200 francs or euros more as compared to an Android phone. Right? And they'll be happy. They don't want your data. But again, the question then becomes, maybe with phones it's okay. Private companies can make them. Is it how we'd like to run our healthcare system? Is it how we'd like to run our education system? Is it how we would like to run our communication system? Is our entire public sphere has to be on a pay-for-service basis? I don't think so. Right? I don't think that having YouTube, which now, for example, I pay for YouTube. So I pay 15 euros every month. I have a subscription for YouTube, and I don't see any advertising. And I can download videos when I use the app.
Okay, im Gegensatz zu den meisten von uns, würde ich mal sagen, die das einfach gratis verwenden, dann immer die Werbung wegklicken müssen am Anfang.
Yes, but then the question becomes, okay, if we accept it for videos, should we then have also private libraries where I'll be paying, instead of funding them with taxes, I'm going to have 50 libraries and we'll all be paying them fees. There is a reason why we build infrastructures that are collective and public in nature, because simply for reasons of efficiency, it makes sense to have shared resources which people can fund with taxes. When it comes to digital, our mind completely blankers.
Aber was würde das heißen? Wollen Sie all diese Firmen verstaatlichen, anstatt zerschlagen? Wäre das der Ausweg?
No, I don't think that you necessarily need to have the state, and you certainly don't want to have the state running every single service that's built on top of digital infrastructures. But there should be some basic ground, some basic fundament, some basic, ground on which new services can be constructed. I do think that there are certain processes about finding information, curating information, organizing it, that the market will never solve. Because it's just not profitable. It's not profitable to be organizing academic articles. It's not profitable to be organizing high-quality videos that are not about cats. It's profitable to be organizing videos about cats because everybody wants to watch them. Nobody wants to organize videos about violence in the Middle East or human rights abuses.
Aber nehmen wir Wikipedia, Gegenbeispiel.
Yes.
basisdemokratisch, so, da kann jeder reinschreiben. Klar gibt es noch Expertinnen und Experten, die das dann auch gegenchecken und validieren und so. Aber da ist ja etwas entstanden, das ziemlich gut ist.
Also, nobody says it's bad.
Okay.
But Wikipedia is a privately funded good. So it relies on our donations. And it relies on donations also from big technology companies. So the question then becomes, if you like Wikipedia's model so much, where it's funded through charity, would you accept that model for how your healthcare is provided, or your education is provided, or your transportation is provided? Do you want to say, okay, we'll just leave it at the mercy of people who are charitable? So if Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and maybe the rest of us would like to give money to Wikipedia, Wikipedia would flourish, and if not, then not. And then try to think about long-term planning. What does it mean? So if you want to plan ahead, rather than be showing this banner that covers half of my browser when I open Wikipedia, when they do their fundraising campaigns, I mean, okay, you can raise money, and it's a good project, and people should give money to Wikipedia. But if you're thinking 20 years ahead, if you want to be competing with advanced technologies, 5G, quantum computing, and other things, it's not something where you go and crowdfund. It's not like that. Because, again, we are living in a geopolitical universe where China is putting $300 billion into microchips. I mean, it's not, you know, there are certain imperatives, which I think, if you look at it geopolitically, Europe, by and large, has ignored. Because we felt very comfortable. We thought, why bother? Maybe Americans will do it. We'll just get it from them. Maybe China will do it. We'll get it from them. And sooner we arrive at the situation where we are dependent.
Genau, wir sind zu abhängig, es ist zu riskant, diesen Weg einzuschlagen. Und Sie haben ja einen anderen Vorschlag, auch was den Umgang mit unseren Daten angeht. Sie sagen, die Daten gehören uns allen und eigentlich sollten wir die kollektiv nutzen in Städten und Gemeinden, wenn ich das richtig verstanden habe. Also so in kleineren Räumen sollten wir die Daten freigeben und auch nutzen können. Vielleicht können Sie diese Idee noch ein bisschen erläutern.
Well, I mean, look, our life, it's social. We interact with others, we interact with each other. There is usually a data trace that we provide as we do that. We leave that data trace somewhere. And the way in which the current system is organized, these data traces, they are distributed very chaotically. You know, I interact with a smart vending machine. There is a data trace left on the machine. I go with my smartphone and I connect to the 5G tower, so they know where I am. I use a bus. The bus knows that I'm on it. A lot of these services, especially those that are run by separate digital private corporations, they end up in these data silos, right? There is no way for this different data to talk to each other. There is no way to derive any meaning from it for planning purposes. You know, we have a huge problem like climate change. We do want to understand how to use resources more efficiently. We want to have buses that don't go empty. We want to have buses that only go to places where there are actually people waiting for them. We don't want to waste gas. We have an energy crisis. We don't want to waste water. I mean, there are all sorts of ways, even if you don't talk about democratic participation, if you just talk about resource use, where a lot of efficiencies can be introduced. They would not be introduced by private players who are not thinking holistically, who are just interested in the little corner of the world, running their smart machine, running their bus, running their bus stop, running their operating system.
Das heißt, wir brauchen viele Daten, aber wir müssen sie zusammenbringen und vernetzen, damit wir diese Lösung
Exactly, because I'm not at all technophobic. I think that there are certain things that data can enhance. It can enhance planning processes. It can involve citizens into discussions, because then you can, if you have enough data, you can chart out alternatives. You can say, if you go this way, there are 3 options. If you go this way, with a certain decision, do we build a bridge? Do we build a road? You can actually model, if there's enough data, what the future is like. And you can involve citizens in deliberating about it. And people will feel less alienated. They'll feel more involved. They can use digital platforms, not Facebook, but digital platforms, to deliberate all these things. So political process can recover some of the luster that it had lost. So all of these things can be done, but they cannot be done, I'm afraid, if we completely privatize what is now known as the smart city. We give it to Samsung, we give it to Google, we give it to Amazon. No, it has to be done holistically with a strategy. We can invite private companies to do certain things, but there needs to be a strategy. It needs to be holistic, and it needs to basically look at this data layer as a layer which can help us revitalize our democratic system, and not just to sell more goods or accumulate data, which these companies will then sell to advertisers or whoever.
Aber das klingt ziemlich radikal aus meiner Perspektive. Also all das, was die EU jetzt macht mit Datenschutz, Grundverordnung, auch mit diesem Digital Services Act von letztem Jahr, der Hate Speech und politische Werbung verbieten will und solche Sachen, das ist alles für Sie nur Makulatur, nur Oberfläche, nur Symbolpolitik. Eigentlich müsste man doch all diese großen Firmen, diese Dienstleistungen verstaatlichen oder demokratisieren, sodass man das nicht Google aufzeichnet, wo ich mit dem Auto langfahre, sondern irgendetwas anderes, der Stadt Zürich oder der Schweiz. Und dann kann man diese Daten gemeinschaftlich nutzen, nicht kommerziell.
Well, I mean, at the origins of this problem, and this problem exists, this cognitive dissonance between this desire to protect democracy on the one hand, and inability to actually deliver democratic institutions in the modern digital age. This cognitive dissonance and this gap exists. And it exists, I think, because in Europe, we have become almost embarrassed to talk about democracy. We think that democracy is needed at the voter box, at the ballot box. Citizens go to the ballot box once in 6 years. Well, in Switzerland, it happens...
Viermal pro Jahr.
It happens much more often. But by and large, it happens there. And everything else, it happens in the marketplace. So you vote with your wallet. Yeah. And if you vote with your wallet, you want to protect your privacy. We need to make sure that you can vote with your wallet any way you want, and nobody knows what you buy, and nobody knows what you do, and we want to protect all the data. All of it is fine. But we cannot possibly have a robust functioning democracy if we don't find other outlets for political participation, if we don't actively promote them, right? And that requires explicitly saying that we do need new institutions, we do want to involve people in decision-making, we do want to have citizens who are active, not just on Amazon buying things, and not just in the supermarket and not just in the marketplace, but who can actually contribute something useful. And not in their identity as consumers or entrepreneurs, which is how our own political systems are accustomed to listening to them, but also as creative political subjects who think about things other than minimizing costs and optimizing production. And our political system, unfortunately, it's built according to that model. It treats citizens as essentially people engaged in production, the hero, the entrepreneur, inventing things in the garage, or consumers, voting with their wallets in the referendum of the marketplace. But that can't be enough. And we won't survive the challenges coming from China, coming from the kind of Silicon Valley, which has much darker, very extremist kind of considerations as well. I mean, I would actually argue that while we talk a lot about far-right populism, extremism, a lot of that cutting-edge far-right extremism, it's coming from Silicon Valley itself, where you have people like Peter Thiel, the famous investor, and others funding a lot of very strange far-right movements, which I think are hateful of democracy, and they will essentially break through this very weak rhetorical facade that in Europe we have constructed, thinking that it's enough just to give people privacy, it's enough to give them the space in which they can live their quiet, private life, and democracy will survive as long as they vote. No, we need to be more active, we need to be proactive, and we need to use technology to build these institutions, because if not, we'll succumb to this system of control, surveillance, prediction, which this far-right movements coming out of Silicon Valley would promote and use against this more democratic alternative.
Interessant. Das heißt aber auch, immer mehr wird privatisiert, der Staat wird immer schmaler. Das zeigt sich zum Beispiel, habe ich bei Ihnen gelernt, auch an solchen Apps wie Airbnb zum Beispiel, die Wohnungsvermietungsplattform oder Taxidienst Uber. Und Sie sagen, bestimmte Menschen am unteren Einkommensniveau können überhaupt noch überleben, indem sie diese Apps nutzen und ihre eigene Wohnung auch vermieten. Das heißt, es braucht sozusagen wie ein Ersatz für ein Stück Sozialstaat auch, diese Apps. Und das ist das Gefährliche. Und deswegen macht die Politik auch wenig dagegen aus ihrer Sicht.
Again, it wasn't the apps. We have to understand that you can only understand the digital economy of today by putting it in the broader context of global capitalism. We had the financial crisis in 2008 when the interest rates went to zero. You couldn't go and just invest into bonds because bonds wouldn't give you anything. And you know it, in Switzerland you had negative interest rates for a while. So people were looking for outlets where to invest money. You had a lot of governments in the Middle East, in the Gulf countries, who were sitting on these pockets of oil money. They didn't know what to do with it after the oil crisis. So a lot of that money flowed to Silicon Valley. And Silicon Valley had tons of cash. And they had this new model, the platform. You can build it once, and then you can scale it. You can build a taxi company in San Francisco and offer it in Jakarta and Copenhagen and anywhere else in the world, and it would be the same. You just need a cloud, you just need a server, and it will be the same. And what happened is that in scaling up this little tiny platform out of Silicon Valley and out of San Francisco, this money that came from the Middle East and came from elsewhere because of the financial crisis, it subsidized these services. So drivers were getting money even though the service was unprofitable. Rates were kept low because somebody was paying for it. So we created this parallel privatized welfare state which consumers all over the world were enjoying until the music stopped, as they say, and these companies started raising prices or they went out of business. So this welfare state disappeared, and now we understood that, hey, these companies were so cheap not because they were founded by geniuses inventing things in their garages. They were so cheap because they were just burning this cash coming from the Middle East.
Interessant.
And, and again, but in the middle of this, in the process of this, in the decade that we survived, we consumed all sorts of mythologies. We came to believe that companies like WeWork, like Uber, like Airbnb, they were the next General Motors or Ford. They were founded by geniuses. They're not founded by geniuses. They were founded by very smart salesmen who sold their visions of a non-existing world. It was a completely fictional world.
Einfach mal die Mythologie verkauft, die Erzählung.
They sold it to investors. And not just to Middle Eastern investors, a lot of big companies, pension funds, states, sovereign wealth funds gave them money. A lot of that money evaporated. And now these companies are known primarily for how much money they have lost. If you look at something like WeWork, which was a company renting office space and where you could set up your own little space in which to work. It was basically, a real estate company. I think WeWork lost more money to Middle Eastern investors and global corporations than any other venture in human history. And we keep celebrating these people as revolutionaries, as geniuses, and in fact, it's anything but.
Sie selbst haben ja auch ein eigenes Projekt gestartet vor einigen Jahren. The Syllabus heißt das. Und Sie verschicken jede Woche, ganz einfach gesagt, einen Newsletter, also mit wichtigen, guten Informationen aus dem Netz zu einem bestimmten Thema, zum Beispiel Klimawandel oder Demokratie oder sowas. Und sind ein ganzes Team, das das macht. Es ist kuratiert. Im Gegensatz zu einer Google-Suche, wo einfach ein Algorithmus bestimmt, was kommt. Und man zahlt auch dafür, pro Monat, glaube ich, 12 Euro. Was war die Grundidee und was ist der Unterschied jetzt zum Beispiel, wenn ich bei Twitter bestimmten Personen folge oder Institutionen, wo ich dann auch die relevanten Informationen kriege? Sie sind ja eigentlich Menschen. Bei Ihnen sind Menschen dahinter, die dann entscheiden, was für mich relevant sein soll.
So we do have human curators, and human curators do decide and pick, and there is somebody responsible. When you think that we're sending you fake news, you can come and point a finger and say this is responsible, and ultimately I will take the responsibility.
Ähnlich wie ein Medium, wie eine Zeitschrift.
But it's not, we do not present ourselves as an artisanal workshop where we sit surrounded by paper and everybody goes through 10 million. Of course, we use algorithms too, right? But the question is where in the production chain do you use algorithms? You can be using algorithms to decide on what's important. You can be using algorithms to help you to prepare maybe a short list where the curator decides. The reason why I started it was because I felt that in the digital public sphere that's completely privatized and managed by the Facebooks and Twitters of this world, important subjects tend to get ignored. Because, again, we settle on the lowest common denominator. So we want to make fun of Donald Trump, we want to discuss videos of animals, we want to talk about something that excites, that provokes. But longer subjects, they don't get covered, even though content about them exists. Yep. We have public institutions, we have shows like yours, we have libraries, we have galleries and think tanks that are producing tons of interesting material, tons of relevant material that we need to solve climate change, to solve the problem of inequality. Just nobody gets to see it. It disappears. It might be on YouTube, but it will have 10 views. When a video of Donald Trump saying something stupid will have 10 million. You are saying your show is fantastic and it gets the coverage it needs because it's on television. But there is a lot of content that is already there. It's just, as I say, it's not evenly distributed. People who know how to find it, but the general public doesn't. And what I wanted to do with the syllabus was to shame public institutions. Because it's the job of the public institutions to curate, to find, to inform. That's why we built public service media. That's why we've built museums. That's why we built libraries. And all of them, when you pressure them, why aren't you doing this job? They tell you, oh no, we can't compete with Google because we need billions, we need investments, we need tech talent. And what I wanted to show them is that with minimum of resources, without getting state funding, without getting venture capital, it can be done. And if I can do it with a small team, and no venture funding and no state funding, there is no reason why a library cannot do it. There is no reason why a university cannot do it, why a gallery cannot do it, why a public institution cannot do it. And it was kind of my interventionist way of showing them that you can be intervening in the market for attention. You can be, it's almost like a Keynesian intervention into the attention market. You know, we think that the attention market is broken. It's dominated by these private players, and we need an injection of something a little bit more rational, less privatized, less driven by the concerns of the market, and that's what public media traditionally did. It's just that I think they're failing, but they're failing not because they cannot be doing it better. And this is why I think we've incorporated this rhetoric of the enemy almost. You know, we've come to believe what Silicon Valley tells us. And they tell us we are all inferior, we cannot be doing anything, our hands are tied. But it's not at all the case. We can be doing things and we should be doing them.
Ja, und Sie verkörpern das auch, diesen Mut, diese Selbstermächtigung zu sagen, wir brauchen Alternativen, wir brauchen alternative Institutionen. Und trotzdem stelle ich mir vor, Sie machen das seit 12, 13 Jahren oder noch länger. Ist auch frustrierend wahrscheinlich. Es ist immer nur ein Tropfen auf den heißen Stein. Also auch dieses Syllabus ist ja gut, aber das kennen wahrscheinlich wenige. Und der Gegner ist so groß. Wie gehen Sie mit dem persönlich?
I know, well, it's not easy, but well, the syllabus has been around for 3 years. But again, I am convinced. That's why, you know, I don't think that the goal for me is to turn syllabus into a competitor to Google, because I don't believe that a private venture is the right entity to be doing and accomplishing an important public mission. For me, a good mission accomplished for syllabus would be to dissolve itself, because the public institutions, which is who are supposed to be doing it, fund it through taxes, having the mandate to do it, are well equipped to address the challenge that comes from Google and Facebook. Right? So I am doing it conscious that if I really succeeded my mission, I would also fail because I would need to shut it down and dissolve it. So it has a limited shelf life. And so far, again, it's a struggle against the current, because the ideological convictions spread by Silicon Valley with its conferences, its think tanks, its ideologists, its apologists, its blogs, it's just too much.
Ja. Herr Morozov, ich wünsche Ihnen viel Erfolg weiterhin mit dieser wichtigen Arbeit, die Sie machen, und danke Ihnen ganz herzlich für diesen Einblick hinter die Kulissen, hinter die Ideologien des Silicon Valley und auch in die Machtzusammenhänge zwischen Politik, Wirtschaft und Digitalkonzernen. Vielen herzlichen Dank.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Ja, wie geht ihr mit euren Daten um? Welche Forderungen habt ihr an die Politik? Schreibt es uns in die Kommentare. Und wenn ihr mehr zum Thema wissen wollt, hier findet ihr einen philosophischen Stammtisch zum Thema und ein Gespräch zum Thema künstliche Intelligenz. Und wenn ihr nichts verpassen wollt, abonniert doch unseren Kanal. Danke und auf bald.